Ooh.
Mm.
Turn the knife, Ben.
Yeah, so that's a different podcast.
That's a different
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah.
We're gonna break now so we can brawl.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Beck Bodie No Bonds podcast. I'm here with Jim Bodie, co-founder of the company. Instagram handle is
Jay Bodie, 71.
very good.
Been practicing.
Been practicing.
I was ready for that.
I was ready. Matt Maurizio,
Yep.
at Matt Maurizio.
Yep.
Very easy. Ben Beck, at bbeck3333. Also, obviously, you should probably mention the at Beck Bodie Instagram handle. Find these podcasts on basically anywhere you can find podcasts, except iTunes right now, but we're working on that. And then today we have special guest, Andy Robertson is with us today. Andy is...
Andy, you have an Instagram handle?
I do not.
Okay.
No, I'm gonna have to work on that.
working on that.
I'm thinking about that right
Yeah,
now.
that's right.
Yeah. Get
It's a
on there.
catchy name.
If you can post more than 3 times, you're beating Jim.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's it.
I could probably do that today.
Right.
So Andy's a specialist in the area of Social Security, and is a great asset for our firm, Beck Bodie. A couple interesting tips about the panel today. So number one, everybody sitting here is a graduate of Northeast University, Boston.
Excellent.
Go Dogs.
Number 2, we have 2 football alumni and 2 baseball alumni. Can you guess who is who?
That's a pretty good one.
That's a good one.
Is it that obvious?
Should we stand up?
Let me give my other profile.
Yeah. Beck Bodie, quick tip or quick question: which program is still alive?
Ooh.
Mm.
Turn the knife, Ben.
Yeah, so that's a different podcast.
That's a different
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah.
We're gonna break now so we can brawl.
Yeah.
We'll come back.
Nope, we're going to
So-
stay on this podcast.
Yeah, let's stay in this podcast for a little while. But today we wanted to bring all of us together, especially with Andy here in his expertise and wisdom.
You want to give one more tip or one more piece of insight?
Oh, go ahead.
How many children do we have collectively
Oh, jeez.
among these
Ah.
4 dads?
Calculator, please.
Yeah. Right.
3.
5.
4.
6.
18.
Whoa, that was quick
Wow.
math.
Yeah.
Are you in finance?
18.
18 people. 18 little versions of ourselves.
18 and under, is that right? Your oldest is 18?
Yeah. So,
Awesome.
so needless to say, we're all working really hard.
Very,
Come on
very
down.
hard.
Come
Yeah,
on
that's
down.
right.
We're here for you anytime, day or night.
Share this podcast.
Yeah. Wow. 18. That's a lot.
Yeah. Anyway.
So any of that, we wanted to get together, bring Andy aboard for today's conversation about, you guessed it, Social Security. So within our work as financial advisors, planners, investors, we meet with clients and prospective clients and contacts every day where questions in some way, shape or form, of course, come up about retirement, but we certainly get specific questions about Social Security, Medicare. When people start to reach that age of retirement, that's when the wheels start turning about, hey, what does this benefit that I'm getting from the government really mean? Thankfully, with the internet and the flow of information, there's a lot more resources. I'm sure Andy will get into today out there for consumers, for folks. But aside from that, it can be complex sometimes to, especially since there are some, in my opinion, some subjective issues with respect to Social Security that maybe we'll talk about a little bit today and bring to light, and especially with a specialist.
Mm-hmm. That's
Three
extra
times
special.
fast. It's very special to have Andy here today to kind of shed his experience and expertise on the topic. So,
I got a great question to start with.
Sure, bring it on.
Is it as confusing as it seems?
It is.
Why?
Well, if you talk to the people that work at the Social Security Administration, they tell you that Social Security has about 65,000 reasons to keep it as complex as possible. Those are the 65,000 employees of the Social Security Administration. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably like the tax code as things have changed over the years. It's become more complex because it's being added to rather than rebuilt. So it's maybe like building a house and putting an addition on a house. You kind of have to work around what's already there. But it is complex. I mean, to give you guys some perspective, 2,728 filing rules alone. A married couple has more than 500 possible filing combinations to consider. So most people really only consider one or two. They don't get any advice. Social Security stopped giving advice as an administration about 15 years ago because retirement's become more complex. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people really had two parts. They had a pension and they had Social Security. Today, as you guys know, I mean, there's just so many moving parts. So they made decision as an organization to forbid their folks from giving advice for obvious reasons. They're not qualified. So many people don't get any advice at all. They make what seems to be an obvious decision, and typically it's maybe not the right decision or the optimal decision for them. So that's one of the reasons we really ventured into this, is we saw an opportunity to really help people get more value, economic value out of Social Security. A lot was being left on the table and missed. And of course, the less stress we can place on Social Security selfishly, the more we place on the capital that you guys are managing for them, and the higher probability people have of running out of money. So it's a real missed opportunity if we're not looking at the role it can play in taking on some of that responsibility.
Yeah, no, that's great. And maybe before we get too deep into it, because our podcast is reaching, or probably better said, has the potential to reach a lot of people. Quick segue into follow us at Beck Bodie on Instagram and our other handles. But to that point, we have a lot of consumers, clients, contacts, but also there are financial professionals that tune into our podcast. So can you tell a little bit more about specifically, your company and what you do and kind of the services that you provide?
Yeah. So our primary business is we're an educational company for financial advisors. As you guys know, most of the folks here have been through our course. But because of Social Security's complexity and the fact that financial advisors don't really have a single place that they could go to for support with those more kind of challenging situations, my wife and I started the Corporation for Social Security Claiming Strategies, which ultimately is a class that you can go to. It's an online, on-demand course that you can take at your leisure. It's 200 plus pages, 14 chapters on strictly the Social Security retirement system. So what we do is quite frankly, we make financial advisors better at serving their clients. That's our goal. And I think we've done that very successfully. We've got hundreds and hundreds of advisors around the country who've matriculated through our course. And we've also developed a software platform that a lot of advisors are now using to really understand the implications that different Social Security filing strategies have on a plan's capital requirements. So obviously, if we're talking about Social Security, we're talking about retirement. And if we're talking about retirement, we want to understand not only what my options are, but how those options impact the single biggest concern people have, which is running out of money. So our goal was to try and determine whether or not Social Security could play a role in driving that number down, and ultimately, through a quantifiable process that we developed and built on a web-based platform, people can now do that. Financial advisors can do that for their clients. So that's our core business. Really, is helping financial advisors bring more value to their clients.
So on that same topic, then let's jump in with like a question that we always get with every client that is emerging retirement age. Maybe they've retired already, maybe haven't reached the age of Social Security yet. But one of the questions we get a lot is that we've paid into Social Security for so long. Shouldn't I take my benefits as soon as possible? Or just the more broader question is, when should I take them?
Yeah, and it's there's no easy answer. The answer is it depends on a lot of factors, as you guys know. The issue I find is that there's really two types of folks. There's folks that are in a bad spot and they need income. Maybe they've been displaced and they don't have another source of income. That's a different situation. There's also people that aren't necessarily looking to retire, but they have the opinion that you're talking about, which is I want to take benefits as early as possible. Maybe Social Security won't be there. I paid in. It's my money. Well, a couple of things. Number one, if you continue working and you have earned income prior to full retirement age, you're effectively going to forfeit all your benefits.
Right.
Certainly, people who are part-time workers, maybe not the case, but for full-time workers who earn a decent living, it's fair to say that they're not even going to receive a check, because under the earnings test, which is in place until you reach full retirement age, you have to forfeit $1 in benefits for every $2 in earned income you have over the threshold. So it's kind of one of those things where it sounds good in theory. I'll take my benefits early, because I'll save them, I'll grow them, I'll invest them, and I won't wait. And then if Social Security isn't here, or something changes, I'll have my money. So I'll kind of hedge my bet. I'll get my money early, I'll grow it, I'll save it, and then if I had waited and I'm still here, I would have got a higher payout from Social Security. But now I have my money, so I'll just increase my income above what I'm getting from Social Security when I took early, through this kind of extra pile of cash I would have accumulated if I took benefits early, which again, that sounds good in theory, but if you're not getting your hands on the money, it's going to be tough for you to build a secondary pile of cash to compete with the guaranteed increases Social Security's talking about. And so that's probably in my estimation, one of the single biggest mistakes that people make is they think that they can take the money now, grow it, save it, invest it. But if you suffer from the earnings test, it's a forfeiture. You don't get any money. So they withhold checks until you meet the forfeiture requirement. And again, for the people that you're talking to, the clients that you work with, I'm going to guess they're going to forfeit the whole thing. So it really wouldn't serve any purpose. There is a misnomer out there that when I turn 66 or 67, I hit FRA, I'm going to get all that back in a lump sum check.
Right.
Sounds good. Again, it doesn't happen. You get a credit. You get what's called an adjustment to the reduction factor, which is automatic at full retirement age, but it's not a lump sum repayment of everything that was withheld. They just credit you back the months that you didn't get checks in what they call your monthly benefit rate. So you just get a bump. You don't get a check. So, the long answer is it depends. It depends on a whole host of things. Taking early typically doesn't work out for the people that we work with. And waiting is really valuable. If I don't take benefits at 62 and I wait till 70, they're guaranteed to get 76% more at 70. So that's a pretty significant increase. And that number could be larger, because whether you're taking benefits or not, once you reach the age of entitlement, 62, any cost of living adjustments that are declared or applied to your primary insurance amount, which is your benefit for retirement age, and then the delayed retirement credits are actually stacked on top of that. So, we've seen instances where the increase wasn't 76, that was the minimum. The increase was in excess of 120%. So when you start looking at Social Security that way, and the fact that it can turn on an income at 70 that's 120% larger than it would have been at 62, think about how much capital you'd have to accumulate to compete with that. That's the value. People look at break even. Break even, there's no place, in my opinion, in retirement income planning for break even. Your job isn't to make sure your clients break even. Your job is to make sure they never go broke. I can tell you that there's been a lot of people who took benefits early because they wanted to make sure they didn't want to wait because they were worried about break even, who lived beyond 78, and they had wished they had waited, but it's too late. So I think there's a lot of misinformation. I think people make uninformed decisions based upon a very short-sighted analysis, and you guys can help them with that.
Yeah. Andy, is there a time when clients should start planning for Social Security? Like generally what we have seen in our conversations is they start thinking about it as they're about to retire. When is the optimal time to start having those conversations about Social Security?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like everything, and you guys live through this. People tend to show up on your doorstep when they're ready to retire and they have a bunch of stuff. You've got to figure out how to piece it all together and make it work. I think we would all agree, if we could talk to them sometime before, we target as a group, we try and get our message out for you guys to people who are 60. So 65 to 7 years before full retirement age, but certainly before 62. So you can save them from potentially making a bad decision. I'm not saying 62 is a bad decision. It depends. But they may feel like it was a bad decision after the fact, and we can't help them. If somebody makes a decision at 62 and meets you at 66, there may not be much you can do for them at that point. So I would say 60 is a good number to start having that conversation and letting them understand the broader implications that a Social Security filing strategy can have on a plan's, what I'll call a plan's success. If we can make a plan more fortified because Social Security is doing more of the lifting over time, that's a win for your clients.
Sure.
That gives them more money for you to manage and grow for things that they really want to do. if we can take care of that kind of fixed income need, and let
Mhm.
you guys grow the money for discretionary needs and legacy and things like that, and we can do that more effectively because Social Security is doing more of the lifting, that's a win. I mean, if you think about it, if I get 120% more at 70 and it's automatically cost of living adjusted, think about how much less stress there is on the portfolio that you're managing.
Right.
I'll ask you guys a question. When it comes to managing money, would you rather manage money for growth or for income?
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm venturing to guess that managing money for growth is a lot more fun,
Well,
at least right now.
Well, I mean, one of the big factors that is, I think, maybe not ignored, but not necessarily realized, and we talk about it every day, is that risk doesn't shut off at 65 or
Right.
62. You're going to live by average now at least another 20, 25 years,
Mhm.
right? So while when we look at the portfolios that are put in front of us from other financial advisors, and there's a heavy allocation towards fixed income and bonds for folks that are in their early 60s. We look at that and say, whether you're retiring now or not, whether you can or cannot, you still need a very reasonable amount of your portfolio still allocated towards growth.
Absolutely.
Because you're not investing for the next 3 years still, even though you may be close to retiring or already in retirement. It's going to be for a long time. And that huge risk, which you've already brought up, is longevity.
Yeah.
That for, and it doesn't, there's a lot of folks that we talk to and of differing net worth. And there's usually a pretty good correlation between, how much income they have or how much asset they have and their lifestyle expenses, right? So to say that somebody that has $5 million doesn't have to worry about longevity versus somebody that has $500,000 in retirement or $1 million is not necessarily true, because the lifestyle needs of somebody with $5 million are just that. There is a correlation between that. So longevity is a issue that's not necessarily for folks that aren't in the 1%, so to speak.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I agree. I would add to that. Social Security. I think your point is that Social Security is a tremendous longevity combatant.
Absolutely.
So when we look at all the risks we're trying to manage every day, market volatility, inflation, taxes, all these other things, longevity is just a risk multiplier.
Mm-hmm.
So the longer you live, every one of those things becomes exponentially more of a threat to the assets that you're managing. So if we can shift a fair portion of the income requirement onto this third-party payer, Social Security, and off the capital, then we're alleviating all that risk and the risk multiplier, the longevity. Yeah. And I would also think it's important to recognize that, according to the American Society of Actuaries, a wife outlives their husband by on average 14 years. So the real person that gets left kind of in a bad situation if we don't manage longevity properly is the surviving spouse.
It's interesting. So certainly, if the first question that we get is centered on the most frequent question we get first is centered on when should I take my benefits, the very, very close second is Social Security going to be there?
Yeah, that comes up a lot.
Right.
And it's just my opinion, but my opinion about Social Security is it's a political football right now. It gets kicked around by both sides. It's kind of one of these leverage points they can use to get votes, threaten to change it. Here's kind of how I see it. You guys can tell me what you think, but in 2008, we learned certain financial institutions were so important to our financial system that they were too big to fail. Think about an income source that's the primary income source for 76 million people. So, if the fear is that Social Security is not going to be here tomorrow, think about the implications of taking 50% of the purchasing power off the table for 76 million people. What kind of an impact would that have on GDP? I mean, it would be catastrophic. It's not even an option. So I think, again, it's a political football. Social Security is backed by a government promise. There are some simple fixes, in my opinion, that could be undertaken to change it. They're not as aggressive as some of the things we've heard. Most of those things get shot down. the other thing I would say is, this generation, while that may be a fear, and lead them to make, in my opinion, I should say, poor decisions, suboptimal decisions. Think about it this way. How many of them can have a meaningful conversation about retirement if we assume Social Security won't be there?
Right.
I mean, again, it's not an option, not for this generation. It may change for us, but I think for this generation, it's just not an option. So, the other thing I would add is you'll hear many things. One of the things you'll hear is that it's going to be insolvent. Well, there's never been a credible source that said it's going to be insolvent. What's been said is that if they do nothing, sometime around 2034, whoever's receiving a check is going to get a pay cut. Well, think about it this way. If I take benefits at 62 and my full retirement age is 66, I incur a 25% reduction for life for taking benefits early. If I wait and don't take benefits at 62 and wait all the way till 70, I get a 76% increase. So if the logic you're applying is, I'm worried about a pay cut, would you rather keep 74% of a check that's 25% smaller, or 74% of a check that's 76% larger? I think if anything, if we can get people to think about it clearly, that's another reason to wait, not another reason to take benefits early. If the reality was in 2034, Social Security was going to be insolvent, they weren't going to be able to pay, and it was going to be something where it would no longer be there, that would be a different discussion. But I think, like many things, Social Security is not only political football, it's great clickbait. There's a lot of misinformation out there about what's really happening. And it's just not, the simple answer is it's not viable for us as an economy to eliminate Social Security. And we can't build meaningful or have meaningful retirement planning discussions if we assume it's not there.
Right.
We can just say, we'll just keep working then, right? Because you can't afford to give up 50% of your income because you think it's not going to be there. So, that's kind of where we go with that conversation on a regular basis. It comes up a lot, as you guys know, when we've done client events, it comes up as well. And it's definitely a concern, but I think people, once they apply some logic to it, they feel better.
I'm putting myself in listener shoes, in some client shoes, and if I have your ear, I want to say, my question is, I think I'm probably pretty good with the amount I've saved up right now. I'm close to my retirement age. I think I'm going to be fine, but at the same time, I put a bunch of money into Social Security, and I don't like how much Uncle Sam takes from me. I want to get that money back. How do I make sure I maximize what I need in that retirement stage, or what I can get back from the government in that retirement stage? Because I feel like it's my money. I should get it back.
I think, what you have to do is really look at the bigger picture. What's my income goal? What do I have for assets? What am I using to stress test the plan I'm about to employ? Do I have enough assets? What's the process you go about using to make that determination on the front end? And what role could Social Security play? I think if you look at Social Security in a vacuum, which is kind of what you're describing, you just look at Social Security all by itself,
right?
Then you're always going to you're always going to find yourself wanting to take benefits early because it may not be there, because I don't know how I'm going to live, because I want a Social Security maximization. You have to throw away the concept of Social Security maximization and think about Social Security optimization, because if you look at Social Security in a vacuum, you fail to account for its value that it provides long-term for combating longevity, inflation, and taxes. Here's one simple example. So the media has done a great job minimizing the value Social Security provides in combating inflation. I think you guys would agree to that. If you look at the index, it's tied to the CPIW. The media will say, well, it's just one of the lower CPI indices. It stinks. It could be better, blah, blah, blah. Well, the vast majority of clients, quite frankly, don't even have a defined benefit plan anymore. Never mind a defined benefit plan that provides an automatic cost of living adjustment. Social Security since 1975, the cost of living adjustment's been 3.73%. Show me another pension product that's provided that kind of increase, and I'd be shocked to find it. Most state pensions, civil pensions, the only pension I know that provides cost of living adjustment of any meaning today is the federal pension. Not to mention, I think the other piece that's missing is Social Security is very tax favorable as a source of income in retirement. A lot of people think you have a 50% threshold and an 85% threshold, and it's somehow some kind of retroactive tax. It's not. It's a progressive tax. Today, if you have two max Social Security earners and they retire, you could deliver them in excess of $100,000 of income tax free, thanks to provisional income. So think about the power of that. Do you think taxes are going up over the next 30 years? If they don't, you think Social Security won't be here? If we don't do something with our income as a country. So we had a tax cut here recently. The debt's gone from 19 trillion to 21 trillion. It's inevitable. I think over the next 30 years, we're going to see a tax increase. And, in spite of the fact that the media talks about this lower tax bracket in retirement, I don't know about you guys, I've yet to find this tax bracket they're talking about. It doesn't exist. We're all subjected to the same tax brackets. And I think provisional income is an incredibly powerful tool to help manage taxes. So that's not accounted for in a kind of Social Security in a vacuum. But imagine if you just save somebody $10,000 a year in federal income tax. How much more capital would they have on hand just to combat that? So those are the things that get overlooked when you don't think about Social Security from an optimization perspective. And by the way, that 3.73, if I'm delivering it to you on an income tax-free basis, because the Social Security benefit is so significant in the broader plan that you're not paying any income taxes at a 20% effective tax rate, you'd need a taxable equivalent coal increase of 5%. All of a sudden, this crappy job that Social Security does doesn't start to look so poor anymore, does it? When it's put in the appropriate context. So there are three things that I think Social Security can help you combat: longevity, inflation, and taxes. Those are the three critical things. Of course, it takes market volatility off the table because you're not taking income from a portfolio that's coming from these third-party payers. So you could add that if you want as well. But I think ultimately, if longevity is the risk multiplier, the critical risks it prevents from being multiplied are taxes and inflation. And I think they're both not going away. We could see. I don't want to go. You guys know. You see what's happening in the economy. I mean, we could see some real change in interest rates over the next 30 years as well.
Absolutely. We've got time for one more question, and I don't know if you have one, but is there I hate using this best kept secret type of stuff, but is there something that you through your travels, the majority of the public doesn't know about Social Security and should?
Well, I think I'd go back to the tax piece. I really would. I think it's overlooked. Provisional income is part of the IRS code. There are a handful of things that can be very tax efficient over time. The biggest thing that people talk about today are Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks. The issue with Roths for this generation is they came along too late. So most of the clients haven't accumulated enough wealth in a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k for to distribute enough tax-free income for it to have a material impact on the plan's taxability or tax efficiency. Life insurance is something that high net worth people have used in the past, especially when the estate tax structure was different. Tax-free policy loans, I don't see that as much anymore. Municipal bond income, while it's income tax-free, it's countable under provisional income, so it could actually make more of your Social Security income taxable, ironically. So it doesn't leave us with a lot. Social Security is probably the best kept tax planning secret. And I find, with all due respect to our friends in the tax universe, it's overlooked. It's overlooked, and it's a great value add for you. I mean, if we assume that a safe withdrawal rate is 4%, and we save somebody $10,000 a year in federal income tax, how much do we have to have in capital to cover that $10,000? How much additional capital? So that's the economic value it provides, and I think, for everybody in your world, that's the most important thing. You're going to want to be able to quantify the value you provide to your clients as we continue to see technology's role and its the compression of everything that you guys face every day. Value is incredibly important, and that's a value that really isn't accounted for in most softwares, not that I'm aware of at least, and it's overlooked. But I think you guys certainly are aware of it from our interactions, and it's a great value to people when you bring it to the table for them.
Absolutely. That's the point of these podcasts and quick tips is to really, this was a great example of it today. I appreciate you coming on for a few minutes here to talk. I mean, the whole point of these podcasts and quick tips are to help educate the public about some of the good things you can do to improve your financial situation. So Andy Robertson, I appreciate it. Again, follow us on @BeckBodie or Instagram or individual Instagram handles. Check us out on Spotify and anywhere else that you can find podcasts. And until the next one,